Welcome to another Transformation Advisor One Take video. Today we're going to take a look at what's new in Transformation Advisor 3.1. So what I have here is Transformation Advisor 3.1. So let's take a quick look at the what's new section. So there's quite a lot in 3.1. The first thing is reports. In the reports, we now include an explanation of exactly how the workspace level costs are calculated. I'm going to go into a lot more detail in this in a minute, but basically what it means is when you see that number at the top of the screen, we're going to show you exactly how we got there. In terms of our recommendations, we've made some changes. So the formula for calculating the cost of modernizations when you're dealing with enterprise entity Java beans is different, as well as when you have large amounts of applications across a large estate, the algorithms we use for calculating the final costs are different. They've all been adjusted based on our work with customers. The upshot of that is there's an expectation now that you may see your workspace modernization cost fall. So if you've loaded data into TA 3.0, you load the same data into 3.1, particularly in larger data sets, I'd expect to see a smaller number. When you upload data in 3.1, the default target for recommendations is WebSphere Liberty. In the past, it was Open Liberty. And when you're dealing with the common code, when you're looking at it, we've now ordered it by complexity within applications, just so you see the ones that you're going to have to deal with most floating to the top. We've new layouts in terms of the recommendation and migration plan page when you're kind of in a zoomed in mode, particularly at the 400% zoom. Let me just move this down. In terms of the data collector, we're now using the later version of the binary scanner. The big change here is that there's very significant performance improvements. So the process of doing the analysis in the binary, using the binary scanner, could be up to 50% faster. Additionally, the Common JTimer and Work Manager are now supported by the WebSphere Liberty Heritage APIs. So when you run the data collector, if you have those, if you're using those capabilities, you're going to see that moving to WebSphere Liberty is going to be easier because the Heritage API is there. There's going to be no dev costs associated with that. Also, a quick reminder that we now support both Docker and Podman, and the latest versions of RHEL mean that you basically won't have any prereqs to install TA local because Podman's there already. From a security perspective, we've made some improvements around how we're going to run using the default restricted security context constraint. And what that basically means is there's less step on in the install. You don't have to go and make one custom for Transformation Advisor. And a quick reminder that MQQ managers have been deprecated in terms of getting an assessment for them, and that's going to be removed in the next release. Okay, lots going on there. Let's kind of dive in. So I'm going to start off here, and what I'm looking at is Transformation Advisor 3.1, but what I want to do is I want to jump in and show some data in Transformation Advisor 3.0. So let's take a look at this guy. This is indeed 3.0, and here I have created an imaginatively named workspace called data, and when I jump into that, I'm going to see my data. And a situation like this, as we've seen in the field, and we take a look at this, I've got 10 applications. It's telling me my cost for modernization is 684 days, which is absolutely massive. But when I take a look at my actual application costs, you're going to see there's one single application that is coming in at 672 days. And this is an outlier to do with the way we calculate the cost for enterprise Java beans. So what we wanted to do was address that, because in the past you'd have seen this number, it would have been for that application, you'd have dug in and you'd have said, right, I'm going to do something with my EEJBs and I'll decide what it is. The thing here is that because we now provide that workspace level cost, it really throws out the numbers. If I look at this data, I'm going to think it's going to be very hard to get return on investment for modernizing this data set, but that's not really reflective of what's happening. So if I jump back now and I take a look at the exact same data loaded into 3.1, you'll actually see our average cost is 6.4 days. Our overall total cost is actually only 64 days. And if I take a look at that same application, we're going to see that the cost for that application is 52 days, not the 600 and something days it was in the previous case. And this is because At the workspace level, we're applying, we've improved and refined our algorithms in terms of what we do when we encounter a scenario where you either have a huge number of occurrences or you're dealing with specific scenarios like the EEJBs where we were using a very simple algorithm to calculate the cost and it wasn't truly reflective of the effort. So what you can see here is for this data, there's obviously a big difference in terms of our overall cost between 3.0 and 3.1. If you're not using enterprise entity Java Beans, you may still see a drop here because of various other workspace level and rule level changes that have been made that better reflect the actual effort. So I suppose the immediate thing you think if you saw this is, well, it used to be 600 odd days, now it's 64 days. Where are these days coming from? And that's a big feature that we've added in 3.1, and it's transparent calculations. So now if I go ahead and I do an export of this data, it's going to pull down all of my data right here. That's just downloading that guy. So that zip has come down. And if I take a look at the zip, now when we export the data, the structure has changed a little bit. So when I explode it out, there's my data. That's the name of my workspace. I've got my details and I've got my summary. If I look at my summary, we've broken it down into rules, common code, and applications. So here's the summary information for my applications. Here's the summary information for all my common code. But what we've also included is a rules section. So the first thing in the rules sections is the calculations README. This explains all of the um, formulas that we use and the inputs, the attributes we use to determine what our final numbers are going to be. And the real thing here is that this is based on our experience in the field, but modernization does tend to be one size fits none. So the real reason we're showing you all of these numbers is you can see exactly how we do our calculation, so you can be happy with the number. And if you're not happy with the number, you can look and you can say, well, actually, some of the assumptions we've made don't apply to you. Perhaps you have additional concerns to do with compliance. Perhaps you've already resolved some of these situations, so some of the efforts you're seeing, you can actually mitigate. So this gives you a description of each of the attributes that we have here. And I think the big thing, in terms of how we do our calculations is that every time we encounter a rule, it has a base cost. This is the effort for the first time you modernize for this rule. Then we have an instant occurrence cost, which is what's the effort level for each additional occurrence of this rule. Some are zero because you just fix it kind of in one go. Some tend to be small, like 0.1 of a day. And the expectation here is that you're going to be able to scale out your fix. Come together with a workspace cost. So this is the raw cost. We then have the concept of capping to say we have different types of mechanisms for capping a cost when you deal with it across a workspace. Because the simple reality is that if you have to fix an issue 10 times, or you have to fix it 100 times, or 1,000 times, those don't scale in a linear manner. Because once you've got to 1,000 fixes, you're not going to do that by hand. You are absolutely going to come up with a mechanism to roll it out. And that's what the capping reflects. It reflects the fact that you've spent all your time and effort figuring out a solution, and then you use a proportion of the next amount of the effort to make that scalable and roll it out. So it's a scalability cost effectively. And then we have this idea of the capped workspace cost. So this is the number, the final number that ends up coming up in the UI. We'll show how that calculation is done in a minute. And it's the idea that even though we have lots of costs for our issues across a workspace, after we apply capping, some of those costs are going to change. And then we have the exact formula of how we actually apply all these various inputs to get our final outputs. Okay, so where are we at? So that's the calculations README. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the breakdown for the unique application cost. So I'm going to open that with Microsoft Excel. That's popped up on my other window. I'm going to bring it in. So what you're going to see now is a breakdown of all the rules. The first thing that's interesting is that this is the breakdown of all the rules across the workspace for all your unique app code. So straight away, you can look down these rules and get an overall sense of what it is you're going to be modernizing, where are your challenges going to be. Oh, look, we've some stuff with EJBs, we've some stuff with remote web services. So we've some stuff with maybe connection to databases. So you get an idea of who are the types of people you're going to need to pull in to be able to actually help you with this modernization. We give you the details on the rule name here, so we give you a bit more information about all the rules, and you can see the details of that within your applications in TA. The number of applications that these rules apply to, some of them here are applying to 6, some are just applying to single applications. We have a multiplier, which is our dev cost multiplier from the TA UI. And then we have our various other values. So the base cost for this particular issue, are we going to use the base cost? If it's already appeared in common code for this app, we're going to say no, otherwise we're going to say yes. The number of occurrences, we're going to have the cost of each additional occurrence past the first one, our total number of occurrences. Are we dealing with any enterprise entity beans? And that's interesting straight away, because if I look at this guy, you're going to see that there are 67 beans in this particular application. And that's important because this was the one that previously was driving that large number. And we've made some changes. So the first change is that in the past, we used to say in 3.0 or before, each occurrence of EEJB was going to take 10 days worth of modernization effort. It was really an indicator to say, you're going to be replacing the EEJBs with something else. But now we're being more realistic. It's 10 days for the first occurrence. It's 1 day for the rest of the occurrences. So you come out with 67 days. You come out with 76 days because you've got 10 for the first one, 1 for the remaining 66. So that's our 76 days. But we then apply at the workspace level a cap to say 50 days is the absolute limit in terms of what you're going to need to do for EEJBs. So if I come down here and I learn my little formula and I'm going to sum from L2 to L34, what number am I going to come up with? I'm going to come up at 54. So our capped workspace cost is what we really think it's going to the actual modernization effort for the workspace. This is for the unique app code. It comes out at 54 days. If I come back here, let me go to the right one now. If I come back here, you can see exact match, 54 days. And if I do the common code, it's going to be exactly the same. So when you see these numbers here, we now give you specifically a way to see exactly how those are calculated, what are the rules that are involved, and what amount of modernization is each rule going to apply. And and that gives you lots of useful information because, for example, in this particular case, we've got this particular rule, but we can see that it comes from a single application. If a decision was made not to modernize that application, or to modernize that application, for example, to TWAS Basing Containers as a stepping stone which already supports them, then you're actually reducing your modernization effort by 50 days, which really means in terms of unique app code, you're going to drop down to 4 days. Then you look at your common code, but what it really means is that you can clearly see that this app is driving this rule is driving the vast majority of your cost, and then you can make decisions. Maybe this rule is too high, maybe it's too low, maybe you don't know, how you want to handle this. But the point is you can see exactly how the number is calculated, which is going to allow you to either A, be very confident in the numbers we're showing, or B, make some tweaks that are specific to your organization or your applications or the personnel that you have available. I wanted to dig in a little bit more. So here's a different data set, and I just wanted to show you exactly how those calculations happen. So if we take a look at this first row here, we have this particular rule, which is to do with HTTP session invalidation. You can see it as a base cost of 0.25 days. Occurrences cost is 0.1. There are 3 occurrences in total. So it's 0.25 plus 0.1 plus 0.1. That's my 3 occurrences. Total cost 0.45 days. There's no capping applied to that. We're still at 0.45 days. Here's another rule where we apply a different algorithm, and this is another case. If you have a large estate, you may see a drop in your overall workspace cost due to the changes we've made in this rule. So if we take a look at this one, we've got some WebSphere servlet rules. Here's what's interesting. It applies in over 400 applications, amounting to, almost 9,000 occurrences. If we were to apply our rules flat, it'd be 1 plus 0.1 times all of this. And you see here, you come out with a very large number of 877 days modernization effort, which is, absolutely massive. It's more than 3 years in a practical sense. But then we're going to apply our cap, and one of our caps says in the case of a large number of applications, we're going to give you the we're going to take our number of applications and we're going to say, it's going to take you zero point 0.1 of a day for each of your applications, which is going to come out of 41 days, and that's going to come out here. So that's your 41 days capped workspace cost for this issue. And again, it goes back to the idea that you're going to spend the first 5 days of that 41 days fixing it once. You're going to spend another 5 days getting it scaled out, and then you're going to spend the remaining time applying that across all of your different repos, across all of your applications, and adjusting it, for the odd scenario where whatever mechanism you're using to scale it out isn't quite appropriate for that particular application. Okay, so I think that's really the crux of what I wanted to show for the What's New in Transformation Advisor 3.1. You're going to have, transparent calculations right there in your reports. We've tweaked and improved and finessed all of our algorithms in terms of workspace calculation, and the result of that being you may see your workspace effort level drop. We've improvements in accessibility. We could have very significant improvements in run times for your data collector. We're now including the fact that WebSphere Liberty has extended its heritage APIs, so more of the capability that works in WebSphere will now work in WebSphere Liberty. We're running on Podman and Side and Rel, and we've made some security improvements that are going to simplify the install on OpenShift. And finally, assessment for MQQ managers will be gone in the next release. That's it for 3.1. Thank you very much.